roles than RELs do. So RELs, again, are not just meant for emergency situations, they're meant to protect the general public, including susceptible subpopulations. So by reporting those in this report, again, my goal as OEHA's is to protect even the most sensitive subpopulation, even those with sensitivities to chemicals in question, that those people are protected, not just emergency responders.
So how are you going to guarantee that?
There are no guarantees.
No, there's no guarantees that, it's that if the chemical in question is emitted at levels below the acute reference exposure level, then there would be an assumption that you would not experience acute health effects as a result of that exposure. We are not trying to tie the emissions to any risk of exposure because we did not characterize exposure in our study.
And if I could comment, both of these reports are drafts. And so if there are things that you feel are omitted or things that you would like to see, please provide the comments for the OER report to Dr. Reveles. And Russ, those comments should be directed to you on the REMAR report. So again, on those specific items, I would ask that you provide that to them because they'll be reevaluating this after we do our series of safety forums and other places to get input on those. Okay.
I have one comment. In fact, the discussion. ERPG values or the AEGL's values, they have been developed specifically if you have an accidental release, that they are trying to tell if somebody is exposed for this 1 hour concentration, he can still escape. What values you have got in OER, they're like in refineries, you have continuous emission of that pollutant or whatever substance is, and then your acute or REL acute values, they are developed that if you are continuously exposed to that, then if you are below that values, the health effects are not expected to be there. That's a fundamental difference. Risk management program, what we use, those are ERPG values or AEGs. But what your values are for continuous emissions from the refinery. That's a comment I wanted to make. The question I have, you presented the health effects of all the chemicals in the refinery, from the refinery. Most of us know that those documents are there. I was curious whether you have a number or some table somewhere where the health risk from individual refineries are also tabulated. Was this 1 in a million here, or 10 in a million, or 100 in a million? Do you have some source whether you have that information?
So this effort was not an effort to characterize risk from a particular facility. We have other programs at OEHA that have to do with characterizing, risk from a particular facility. That was not part of what we were mandated to do in this project. We were only mandated to look at the chemicals emitted and their corresponding health values. The additional things in the report, I thought I would add because it would be more helpful to have more information there rather than less. And not everyone has a clear understanding what the health values are. So that's the reason that the report eventually expanded to more information, but it was never supposed to be a facility risk assessment. Facilities are expected to perform their own risk assessments and then give those to the local CUPAs. So it would be the local CUPA that would be the repository of those reports.
Local districts.
Yeah, or your district, yes.
Yeah. Sir?
Yeah, just a couple of comments and then a question. Not a critique of anybody here because I know you're working within the resources that you've provided. Just generally, seeing that we're having this briefing in 2018 is kind of shocking in the first place because I would have expected this would be more of a 1978, 1988 briefing, but just a general comment. The other thing I thought that Janet had brought up the document on improving public and worker safety, and I know that's not the topic for tonight, but I think people should make sure to read it because it says specifically here that California does not require companies to actually control hazards. California does not explicitly is not authorized to evaluate and enforce process safety. And even if they did, we don't have the staffing or personnel of inspectors to do the monitoring of the safety. And even if we did, we don't have penalties that are meaningful enough for refineries to respond to any of those penalties. So in general, the question is, do you know of any movement within the state of California with our elected officials or any agencies to make it where we actually do have the ability to require companies to operate in a safe manner?
I'm smiling because that report was written in 2014, and since then, the most comprehensive safety and prevention regulations have been passed and just started being implemented in October to address many of those issues. And a lot of that is falling to the Refinery Task Force Implementation and Enforcement Work Group and addressing a lot of those issues. Bill, do you want, I know you couldn't get out of this. Anything you want to comment on, just the strides that have been taken since the issuance of that report in 2014?
Well, I think, there's been a lot of work done in terms of this whole area of enforcement and the activities that we're embarking on now as a result of the new regulations. It's a whole new game in terms of what we're doing at the local level to oversee these refineries and the things that we're putting the refineries through as a result of the work that came out of the Refinery Task Force. On the enforcement issue, there is a bill that's going through right now that we have been promoting to enhance the penalties to give that deterrent effect. That's going on right now. It's Commercial that's sponsoring that bill, so that's going to be hopefully successful in increasing the deterrence value of the penalties that we might bring forward.
Which bill is that?
1638.
Thank you.
80.
And I encourage you to take a look at the new safety and prevention regulations that were just adopted. They were finalized in August and basically came into force with a series of implementation dates in October this year. And then in addition to that, you've got the activities at the local level, let's say, with the air districts. So cumulatively, I think it's safe to say that the playing field is different today, based partially on what occurred and that report that you have, which was based on our marching orders to improve on those items.
Right, just a general comment that it's something that seems typical throughout the state and throughout the country, that now that oil refineries are becoming less and less relevant as we're moving into more renewables, it's ironic that now, as they're starting to die down in importance, that we're finally figuring out how to regulate them when it's basically too late.
There is an irony there. I will agree with you on that. Bill?
So it's 3138, not 1638. 3138.
Okay.
Thank you.
AB 3138, which has to do, and again, I'm paraphrasing this for the folks at home and the YouTube audience, regarding increasing significantly the penalties for violations of what falls under the CalEPA program. Correct? Okay. Okay. Other questions? Sally?
So you sent me an email back in August of last year, 2017, asking about something related to the work you're doing. You wanted to get some idea for the community outreach effort in order to educate people,
Right.
make sure emergency preparedness and all that. So you said for the purpose of the discussion, the primary zone was the outer boundary, the largest alternative release scenario, and the secondary was the largest worst case scenario.
Right.
So those do unfortunately relate to ERPG, of course, but because those are from the EPA.
Right, well, those relate to the risk management prevention
Yes,
program,
which uses
known in California as CalEPA.
Which
Sorry to get that.
uses ERPG, but anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. So I did answer you, answered you and talking about the fact that it was hard for me to estimate the cost or the extent because those circles, when it comes to MHF, are under reconsideration. And if you use the alternative scenario, something very small, 0.5 miles or something, 3.2 miles for the primary. So we have an EPA report, it's a US EPA, I presume CalEPA, with saying that that scenario, that worst case scenario is understated in several different ways, and that 3.2 mile distance doesn't have any clear basis, in fact, that they could find. So there needs to clearly be follow-up on that report in 2017. So we shouldn't be busy making plans based on those circles without at least acknowledging that the distance could be in fact significantly greater than that. But I didn't see a reply back from you, and also I haven't heard back. I've asked questions about that inspection of the people that described it to me, and I haven't gotten a reply back. So we did hear from the Torrance Refinery, that they've been in constant contact with EPA ever since, resolving those issues and making them go away, but the community has not been included in those discussions.
Right, and again, we are California EPA, and what you're referring to is US EPA. I'm just trying to make a distinction.
US EPA isn't answering.
Right.
And some of them are in California. You know, one of the people I sent a letter to recently is in San Francisco, I believe. So you're in CalEPA, you interface with these people, and this is your program that's affected by this US EPA program. That sets the boundaries for what you do.
So, and right now, what you're talking about here is, let everyone know, is that we've established in the proposed regulations that have not entered into the formal rulemaking process yet, because the effort was on the safety and prevention regs, is the distance outside the refinery, which would be required in the primary zone, which would require notification, monitoring, and outreach. And then in that worst case scenario, require outreach at this point. In the proposed regs, it's interesting that you should mention this, is that when the refinery says, here's what we think it's going to be, there is a whole process in which that comes under scrutiny. So that there's a 45-day comment period, and the CUPAs, working with the air districts, would be required to undergo that, to take a look at that, to ensure that that zone is reflective. And also in the, what?
I'm sorry, the agency that actually does that inspection to make sure it's accurate is the CUPA?
In this case, I'll turn it over to Greg. You've been working on revising the regs, but it is because we try to keep it as local as possible, right? So that determination, saying, okay, does this meet scrutiny, right? Because we took to heart yours and other organizations say the calculations that came up with these spots may not meet scrutiny. And also, it was established certain minimums. And again, this is not in the formal rulemaking process yet, so these are still drafts.
What would that be? Does it have a number?
It doesn't have a number. You will see it when we go into the formal rulemaking process. You will see it posted on our website under emergency preparedness and response. Remember, we had initially the safety and prevention, because that's where you get the most benefit, right? And so now we're working on the emergency preparedness and response. Okay?
Can I give you just a tad of feedback?
Sure.
So that's one of our problems here. So the CUPA, they are very capable in their core jobs. They're not capable of scrutinizing and modified hydrofluoric acid risk assessment to see how far a release of 50,000 pounds would go. You can't expect them
Funny you should mention
That
that,
would be
because we
reasonable.
also run into that saying, a portion saying, if the CUPA doesn't have the expertise in-house, they have the ability to go outside to get that expertise. Because we recognize, okay, here in this community, there's, you know, we're dealing with some smaller communities, like San Luis Obispo, for example, that's got a very small refinery, and they've got like one person doing the CalEPA program, right? So we recognize that some of the stuff is highly technical that may not be available within their own organization, so that we, you know, at the current version, there is a component saying that they're allowed to go out and get additional expertise so that we can make reasonable and appropriate, you know, determinations.
And then there's the issue of judgment and team loyalty. So there are a whole lot of issues to look into.
There are.
Very close working relationship between public servants and the refinery staff.
Right, and Sally, I don't want to go into this, I
No,
really,
but, yeah, I know you don't, but if I send you an email letter, I might not get a reply, so that's why I
I
asked.
think I've been very communicative with you.
Not always.
Okay.
I'll send you, I'll talk with you if we can talk on the phone about
Right.
it, but I'd like a little more interaction.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Yes.
I may have missed this, but was I think they were talking about general emissions or general chemicals in average refinery. But I wanted to know what the cancer risk or cancer survey around Torrance Refinery. Is there any way I can find that out? If not on your site, another site? Has that any of that work been done?
I don't think that work has been done on individual refineries.
Why not? I mean, isn't that important to know that? So that
I think we're moving toward those. I mean, we're doing you know, the groundwork. This is what we're doing. And you're right. It probably should have been done in the 70s. Right? I dare say the technology has improved. You know, a lot of the technology we talk about here has just been really developed in the past several years, and should have been driven earlier. Well, I dare say most people here on both the refinery and the community side would say yes. But these are drivers that, you know, and the movement in technology is really significant based on the work that has been done around.
it takes explosions.
Yeah, I'm not going to, I mean, that's why we're trying to do safety and prevention. That's the key, right? But also recognize that this stuff is inherently hazardous, right?
Is there any ETA for like what she described for having localized maps of like what the risk is in different proximities to the Torrance Refinery or the Wilmington Refinery or any of these other local hazards? Is there a time when you guys expect to have that work done, since you said it hasn't been done yet?
I really don't have an answer to that at this point, right? Greg, sure.
Hi, I'm Greg Vlasic with CalEPA. So I would like to address that because you asked earlier about long-term assessment of long-term risks, and that's come up from another question too. And the long-term cancer risk is completely separate from the acute toxicity risk, which is what we're worried about with modified hypofluoric acid. So the long-term exposure risk of most of these chemicals has been studied and is known. It's been done by US EPA and it's been done by the state, the Torrance organization, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. What we don't know is how much exposure is there at each of the 166,000 businesses that handle hazardous materials in California. We don't know that. There are some specific studies. And one of the things that when we talk about the air monitoring around the refineries and around other industrial facilities that are regulated under the CalEPA program that Paul described, we're start to gather a database from this fence line monitoring, from this community monitoring about what the chemicals actually are on an ongoing basis. We'll have that. We'll start to generate that data. We just don't have it now. But once we have it, we can compare that to long-term risk factors for cancer or what have you, and start to really understand what that is. But that's completely separate from looking at what is the acute toxicity, which is really the main issue that we're talking about here tonight. This fence line monitoring and community monitoring, we want to know what's happening in the event of a release, right? So more looking at acute hazards. But the same data will be useful for helping to assess longer-term health risks. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Greg. Any other questions? Again, these are draft reports. If you have comments that you would like to see or you feel that would enhance and make it more useful, and we will be posting, I believe, these presentations on our website. So to Russ Bennett on the REMAR report and to Dr. Revelis on the OEHA report. If you can ask any other comments or thoughts before we close this evening. Okay. I hope this was useful to you. It's not perfect, but I believe we're making great strides on these topics. Again, my thanks to City of Torrance for allowing us to have this safety forum here. It's only one of many that we have had and plan to have on different topics. And again, Bill Jones from LA County Fire, Russ and Catherine from the RB, Dr. Lowe from South Coast, Dr. Revelis from OEHA, and Greg Vlasic from CalEPA. I do appreciate it. And again, I have my business cards if anyone wants them, and I do have a little half sheet over there that has a lot of the contacts, both locally and the state, on a number of the topics we had here. So if nothing else, I want to thank you all very much and look forward to seeing you at the next Refinery Safety Forum. Thank you.